endless road in its every curve, where the hills commence their climbing. We rested here, if my memory.
Now, here are Bill and Kelly.
Welcome to the Bill and Kelly Show on this beautiful morning. And we would like to welcome our guests to the show. We have with us today Judge Clymer. And did I pronounce that?
You did. Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
And then, of course, we all know Sheriff Reynolds.
Welcome to the Bill
Good morning.
Kelly Show.
And then we have someone that we actually didn't know was going to be here, but we're welcoming him, Jay Berkey, who is also with the Sheriff's Department. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And if you'll get a little bit close to the mic, there you go. All right. And so topic today, we've got some variety things that we're going to be talking about. And as a lot of you know, we've decided to turn over one show a month to our friend the sheriff and let him use it to talk about programs that are going on in the Sheriff's Department. And by the way, we can't get by without sharing again, people, the award of the Canine Selfie. And we're going to be at the Sheriff's Department later on today awarding that. So that ended up being great. Those guys, they did a good job. So let's get moving here. One of the things that happened this past month, was it, that you all went to the state's opioid summit. And so I'm going to get right after and just turn it over to whoever wants to begin talking about what that was about, who actually attended from Porter County.
Well, the Indiana Supreme Court has realized that opiates and opioids are a quite significant problem throughout the state. So they invited judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, public defenders, probation officers, DCS people, medical treatment personnel, and we also invited the Porter County Sheriff's Chaplain from our county. Each county was allowed 8 members to be part of the team. We're so special that we had 11. We had a judge and a magistrate, and we also threw in the chaplain. We also had 2 people from Porter Stark Services who provide treatment to addicts. So it was an opportunity for people throughout the state. All 92 counties were in presence. There were over 1,000 people, and it was a great summit. It was a great seminar that was introduced by the Chief Justice and concluded by another justice of the Indiana Supreme Court.
So this was led by the Indiana Supreme Court. That was their invitation and so on. So,
Yeah, it was put on by the State Office of Court Administration, so it was, the idea came from the Chief Justice of Indiana, and so it was run through the courts, and then the Supreme Court asked the local judges to invite team members from each county, and the sheriff and Chaplain Berkey were part of our team.
great. Sheriff, you want to talk about what you saw there and what programs you participated in?
Yeah, I think we went in there with the understanding that, in the frame of mind that we were trying to see what everybody was doing throughout the state. The program we knew was going to be basically medically driven, medication-assisted treatment, which we're not adverse to in Porter County. I mean, I know a lot of sheriffs are. I mean, they believe that they should just house and provide to the inmates, and that's it. And I think we're really ahead of the curve. So when we brought our team down, and Judge Clymer put this team together, but this team that he asked is we meet monthly. Evidence-based decision-making, that's how it started a couple years ago. We've received a lot of money from the DOC that offsets treatment programs, and our program that Jay oversees in the jail, that's all funded by DOC, and largely as a result of the people that were there at the summit. So we went in there knowing that we're doing a lot of good stuff, but we also know that we need to work. You know, if there's something else that we're not covering, we need to look at that. And I think we all left thinking that we're pretty comfortable on what we're doing. And the one thing that they didn't really talk about, I mean, they dealt with a heroin user it's a disease. That was one of their premises, which we're again not arguing with, but they didn't really talk too much about accountability, in my opinion. If somebody breaks in your house, he's a heroin addict and he needs help, but he also broke in your house. So they really didn't cover that from a law enforcement perspective. So, and we understand that in Porter County. I mean, our judges, there's not one judge that is against medicated assisted treatment. One of which is the Vivitrol program that we have in our jail, and we're showing that it's effective. But we also understand that there's accountability here, that people need to be accountable for their actions. And if you're a heroin addict, you still need to be accountable. And so it's a lot. This whole medicated assisted treatment, to me, it's a lot of moving parts. You have to appreciate law enforcement, but also understand the importance of treatment. And in our jail, we're doing that, but we also know that we have to work with the outside groups. So that's what they covered. They threw a lot of statistics at us last week. Just the mere fact that you had 92 counties there represented. I know a lot of counties walked out of it saying it was kind of maybe almost not over their head, but they probably weren't doing a lot of that, in which we are. So they weren't talking about any programs or any initiatives that we're not doing. But given that I said that, we know we always need to improve. But what's so powerful about our group is that we meet and have met for a couple years now, where a lot of those groups probably yesterday or last week throughout the county or out the state, they're probably not meeting every month like we are. And that's what it takes. It takes a group effort, a collaborative effort to try to deal with this problem.
And Sheriff, we've talked about this on the show before about how we hate to say that you're pioneering, but you are in the Vivitrol program and a lot of educational programs. I often equate it to it's a weird analogy, but the Porter County Jail being a father figure. Yes, you are going to be held accountable, but we're going to make sure you get the help that you require to get on your way. And that's what I find so intriguing. It's just not a slap on the wrist. It is, we're going. There's some programs here for you. So, Sheriff, again, we can't say from the community, job well done. And with the man sitting next to you that you brought along with you today, Jay Berkey, who actually leads some of those programs within the jail. Well, again, welcome to the show, Jay. And by the way, is your family ever going to drop off pies or something?
Well, I suppose I can put that request in.
Yeah. But hey, just a selfish input.
There you go.
So the Berkey family is well known for their pies, but yeah, Jay, why don't you give us your view from what you saw down there and things that you were able to share that Porter County's doing?
Well, I think that the networking was a real important aspect of what we had down there as well, too. You talk to different counties and what they're doing. I had a good conversation with the gal that heads up the programs for DOC. And, you trade stories and you trade ideas and so on. And I think that was real important. I think one of the things that hit me just as much was we had a working lunch where we're in this huge room. Each county team has its own table. And, you work together on some questions that they gave us about what we're doing and so on. And as you look around that big room, some of those tables you see 3, 4 people at these tables, where ours we had to add chairs basically. And I think that's one of the benefits or the great things that we have in this county is that we have a lot of organizations working together, a lot of people working together, all the way from the judges to probation to PACT and what we're doing at the jail. And it's all working together. And I think that's a key component. If we're going to get this thing taken care of, if there is such a thing as taking care of it, it's going to have to be a collaborative effort. And that was exciting to me to see our table filled with all the players, the major players at the table.
And it is interesting to hear about the database decisions that are being made when we're constantly getting information in from the coroner's office and finding out where these and you do have a collaborative effort outside of the sheriff's department with the federal authorities and so on. And Sheriff, do you want to talk about that a bit and your relationship with the task force in the greater area?
Well, from a law enforcement perspective, that probably wouldn't fit into the medicated assisted treatment aspect. Obviously we are law enforcement, so one of my responsibilities and obligations is to the citizens of Porter County, and I think when we took over the drug unit last year, I think things started falling into place for us because the way we approach the law enforcement is really very similar to what we're just referring to on the treatment side, is working together. And what we bring to the table is what I try to do is bring everybody together, all your law enforcement that work in different task forces in LaPorte County, Lake County, Jasper County, the state police, the federal agencies, and we meet once a month also. And since we've been doing that, it's really grown and it's really been effective because it's being transparent, and we're not worrying about who gets the credit, and we're really trying to make a difference in the sense of not just arresting people that are selling 1 or 2 pills, but really trying to identify what, like we say, we try to cut off the head, not the tail. And it's I think that philosophy is resonated through everybody, because one of the worst things law enforcement does is that we don't do real well with feedback, and what we're trying to do is overcome that. And the basic premise behind our whole philosophy is really based on patrolmen that investigate the overdoses as crime scenes. It's those guys in a uniform that go there, maybe perform naloxone and save the victim, but then turn it into an investigator because they're right there. Right. And that's really been the driving force.
Yeah, I guess the point to be made there is that, and we just can't arrest our way out of this. But you are collaborating and finding out. But one of the key things, and we talked about this on the show before, is affecting the market. It's difficult to disrupt the supply of the market, but we have to do something to affect the market, and that's where our medical intervention with Naloxone and then Vivitrol programs come into play.
The whole point here is, if regardless of what the judge does, what Judge Clymer does, what all the judges, what Jay's doing, what we're doing in the courts, what we're doing in the jail, if we can't and if we don't ever reduce the demand for the drug, then we're not going to win, because it's just going to be it's just never going to cease. But if we can do it, and I equate this with this example. 50 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, if you watch an old 50, 60 movie, what's everybody doing in the movies? Everybody's smoking. People still smoke, but they don't smoke as much. We used to smoke in the planes and the trains and in the hospitals. Everybody smoked it wherever. So now no one smokes in those public places. And the young adults are starting to get it. And I think when we get to the point where as they turned against smoking and turn against heroin, then we'll see a difference. But until we reduce the demand for it, it's just, I don't know if we can ever win it. It's just going to be, we do the best we can to keep our county safe and to keep our county the way it is. And, considering where it's located, it's real easy for this county to go to a different direction, and it hasn't done that. They're building homes south of 30. They're building homes, east of Calumet. I mean, there's a lot of new development throughout the whole county because people think it's a safe county and we have good school systems. But so it's our job is to keep it that way.
Exactly.
Well, if I may, one of the things that wasn't mentioned at the opioid summit that our county is leading is in problem-solving courts, and you've talked about those in the past, Bill, but we have 2 problem-solving courts now, and there's another one that's in the works, and those are designed in part to address demand. So there's 2 parts to the problem. One is supply and one is demand, but the problem-solving courts that we have are the drug treatment court and the veterans court. And when the defendants are arrested, then they find out in the jail whether or not they qualify for certain of these programs. In those programs, with Pastor Berkey's involvement, are designed in part to reduce the demand, and they succeed. And our county is leading the state in problem-solving courts, and that's one way to effectively stop the demand or reduce the demand, although it's happening too slowly.
Right. And Jay, why don't you, for those who are maybe tuning in early, why don't you describe some of the programs that are in the jail, the educational programs and the Vivitrol program?
Sure. We have a number of programs that are, again, a collaborative effort from a number of different organizations. In fact, we had a graduation of what's called Men Embracing Change this morning, which is put on by the Caring Place. It is a domestic violence program. We have one on the women's side as well. We have, obviously, drug treatment done by Porter Stark and Frontline. That's a very important part of what we do as well. We have a class called Moving On, which is done by PACT, and a class on fathering and starting an anger management class next week. We have our therapeutic communities where these individuals live with one another for up to 3 months together, and they learn to talk about other things such as where to get your drugs or how to whatever you want to talk about in regards to addiction and so on. So we do have a lot of programs like that. We also, as you mentioned, have Vivitrol, which again is a MAT program, which is medicated assisted treatment. Our Vivitrol program is, just to tell you a little bit about Vivitrol. Vivitrol, first of all, is naltrexone. Now that's different than naloxone. Naloxone is what they give to individuals when they overdose to bring them back. But naltrexone is what Vivitrol is, and it is what we call an antagonist therapy, which what it does is it blocks the receptor that produces the dopamine, where you get the high. And so what it does is puts a lid on the receptor so that they can't get that high when they take either opioids or alcohol. And so it kind of becomes a moot point. I'm not going to get high from this and so on. Now, granted, sure, will they switch to another drug or something that they can get high on? Certainly. Our problem in our county right now, in our nation, isn't people necessarily dying from cocaine overdoses or marijuana or so on. Not that that's any better, so to speak, but we're saving lives through the Vivitrol. And that's what we want to do.
And if I remember correctly, when Sheriff Reynolds mentioned the Vivitrol implementation, this was a collaborative effort that everyone had to come to the table and discuss. And Dave, you want to talk about that? Because it is really intriguing to find out how many parties that had to sit at the table to agree on what happens in order for a person to qualify.
Well, it started with the vendor that sold it. Jay and I were both very impressed with the idea of doing this, but we weren't really sure how we were going to start it. So we contacted 3 or 4 other counties that had it at the time. And they were doing well with it, but they had it for about a year. So they told us who we needed to get to the table. There was different philosophies. One, give the Vivitrol shot after they leave, or give the shot right before they leave. We opted early on that's what we wanted to do, is give the shot early on. But who was going to give it? How were we going to do that? So there were a lot of questions, and we needed answers for. So we had the vendor, then we got probation, we had the prosecutor's office involved, we had the courts involved, we had probation, prosecutor, PACT, public defenders. They all came in, all heard what we were proposing to do, and this was a big change, because what we're asking for them is every one of them had to have a buy-in, or it wouldn't work, and they all agreed. And it wasn't without some struggles. I mean, even though we had to do after we had everybody on board, we had to get the medical provider, we had to get the mental health provider. So we ended up with 2 mental health providers, Frontline and PACT. Frontline didn't have a doctor. So if Frontline was going to be the mental health provider, which we needed, because the most important part of Vivitrol isn't the shot so much, it's the treatment that comes afterwards. So we're basically making these individuals go to treatment. And what we've done in Porter County, it's almost every one of them is court ordered. So if they don't agree with the court order, if they don't comply with the court order, they're coming back. So that kind of gives them a little bit more incentive. So things started working out real well. The first couple guys that we picked, we didn't do a real good job of doing that. So we picked the wrong guys. So they didn't do well. And so we're going to be honest with this, how this worked. But we know we learned from our mistakes and how we actually interviewed, and we couldn't really pick too high a risk of people. And then since then, Jay has the people that we've done. They meet almost once a month, or maybe more. Twice a month, and they go over all the prospective candidates. And it's really remarkable what we're doing here. One thing, you have to give a shout out to the state. This would not be possible if it wasn't for the Recovery Works, and Medicaid now has opened up their approach, because before, a couple years ago, when we looked at this, there was no Recovery Works, and Medicaid wouldn't cover it. So these guys don't have to pay for this. It's very expensive, but Recovery Works pays for it. And we're keeping, of course, we keep statistics on everybody to see how they're doing.
With that, talking about mandated procedures, we are mandated to do a station break here. So we'll be back with you in just a minute.
You are listening to The Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosala. Now, here are your hosts, Bill and Callie.
Welcome back. And so we were talking about the Vivitrol program and how it's gone. And again, when I hear as everything you got feedback and take corrective actions. And Judge, I'm going to turn over to you and kind of give your view from the court's perspective about the Vivitrol program.
Well, what I want to, following up on what the sheriff said, I want to make sure that the people that I order into the Vivitrol program aren't just doing it as a way to cut their sentence, aren't just doing that as a way to get out of jail, that they are buying into the program. And the shot is only part of the program. The shot's expensive. And as Jay says, if they really want to get high or if they really want to get the same effects that they do, they pick a different drug. Fortunately, what Vivitrol does, though, is it affects on opiate-type drugs, and it keeps them alive in the process. And so before I will order, and I have to sign a court order ordering them into the program, I need to see that I think they're appropriate for the program, and to a great extent, it's whether I believe that they're going to abide by the rules of the program. Getting the shot's the easy part. It's the follow-up that's the hard part.
So it's pretty much you've got to hinge on the point, your decision on if you feel this is going to be a repeat offender and if he needs some other type of consideration other than the Vivitrol program. And so, how does that, okay, so if you decide that this guy is going to be a repeat offender, or describe to us what the conditions are, the negative side, someone that comes in and they're recommending the program, what decision process do you go through to make that decision that he's not qualified?
Well, in part, I get feedback from the prosecutor's office, and as the sheriff said, I'll have input from their public defender, from the prosecutor, from someone from the jail that's evaluated them, and I will have all of that information in part in writing, but then have an opportunity to speak with the attorneys. The lawyers can argue their case, but ultimately, finally, if the defendant says, I want this and I'll abide by the rules based on what I've read about the defendant, then I decide whether to sign it or not. A lot of that stuff is confidential. That is, the information that's in their background is just something for the lawyers and the judge. And that's just all evidence that each of our judges looks at and reviews when we decide whether to sign it. It's a significant program. It's not an insignificant expense, and it does work if the right candidates for the shot are selected. So.
But again, Dave, this is the process you talked about when you originally brought this to us. It's an elaborate multi-party process. It's just not the sheriff's department making this determination. It is the court. It is the sheriff's department, along with feedback from the attorneys representing both prosecuting and defense attorneys. Then finally, I assume Mr. Berkey here has some input on what he saw during their incarceration. And so, Jay, you want to kind of go over that with us?
Well, as a team, we meet twice a month. And all those factors we bring all those factors and what programs have they been through. It is mandatory that they have been through our drug treatment program in the jail. Plus, they have to, as the sheriff said, they have to be released into another program. And so those are all factors that we bring in together. And it's important that we work again with the judges because we can't have the program without the judges saying, putting their stamp of approval on it for these individuals as well. And the interesting part of this is when we look at this whole drug issue and the whole epidemic, so to speak, we talk about loss of life, and that's one of the key, obviously, one of the big elements in this. But the other thing that we need to look at, and we don't often talk about, is last year there was a study by Dr. Ryan Brewer, the Associate Professor of Finance at Indiana University in Columbus. He said last year alone, Indiana lost $4.2 billion in direct and indirect costs associated with this epidemic. And since 2003, he said that the state's economy has lost more than $40 billion in joblessness, funerals, first responders, police, naloxone, EMT, acute hospitalization, HIV, neonatal and foster care, incarceration costs. I mean, this is costing us as a state a lot of money. And so that's a secondary issue, obviously, to the loss of life, but it's still an issue.
Yeah. Actually, look what I was about to.
there you
Thank
go.
you. You didn't take my thunder away. It's how it is on the program. It's anyone brings information to the table. It's great. The statistics are alarming. What Jay and I are referring to is I dug up statistics that were research that was done by IU about the loss of it's hard to equate money to what's going on, but for people to have an impact, that's again, it's 4.4 alcohol consumption alone. Alcohol abuse cost 4.4 billion in the state, as just an example. And then you associate a lot of things like a loss of employment. It just goes on, and one has to argue, gosh, do you know all the metrics that has suffered during one of these? So one of the things that I do want to ask everyone's opinion here, from the judge to sheriff to Jay, is there's been some discussion recently about safe zones. And the safe zones, probably I'm terming them incorrectly, but a place where a person can go without fearing prosecution or incarceration, where they can drop off their contraband and someone would be there to help them get into some type of treatment program. Anyone want to go first on that one?
Jay and I have talked about this quite a bit. I know Portage, I think, unveiled some type of safe where you can come in, they won't be arrested if you are a heroin addict. And way before Portage got involved, we talked about this. We just know that nobody's going to, how many people are actually going to come in and say, I'm a heroin addict, I need help. One of the things we've done in our heroin video that we encourage everybody to watch on YouTube is part 2. At the end, it says there is hope. And if you need help, to contact the Sheriff's Department. And we have a list, a program a brochure that actually Jay put together that lists all of the treatment programs, all of the centers, and we would email that to anybody that needs it. And we've had a lot of inquiries. All the girls at their desk, if you come in during the day, they have those brochures. And not to minimize what other departments are doing, we think this is more effective. Of course, if you need help, you're not wanted. We encourage you to come to the station. We will take care of you. We will make sure we'll get you to the right place. But we know that's probably not going to happen. They can pick up the phone and look up in the phone book and see where to go. If you have drugs and not even so much if you're an addict, if anybody has, if they clean out, which I suggest, clean out your medicine cabinet. If you have a loved one that's recently deceased, there's a lot of times they have all these drugs. We have a place at our station, Valpo has one, Chesterton, Portage. We encourage you to get rid of that stuff. Don't make it a temptation for your young adults that are maybe living in your house or frequent in your house. There's no really explanation why you'd keep that stuff. If you come, you can drop it off. It looks like a mailbox. You just drop it off into the mailbox in our station, and there would be no questions asked. And then once every 3 or 4 months, then we dispose of it with help of DEA. So, I think the safe zones, I know it's been very effective out east years ago because of the situation that they have. We have a different situation. Every location's different. Southern Indiana has needle exchanges because they had such a tremendous epidemic of HIV and hepatitis C down there because of dirty needles. We don't have that same situation. So I'm not really a strong advocate of exchanging needles and giving out naloxone to everybody that wants naloxone. But we are encouraging people that if they need help, to seek help. And it's clearly, if you call the police department, we will give you the information that you need.
So basically, they call the sheriff's department, and you basically direct them towards a treatment facility.
Absolutely. If you have an email, we'll email it to you. If you don't, we will give it to you over the phone.
And the next step for them is to get into that treatment
Right.
facility and set up. And I tell you, we've got some wonderful treatment facilities.
No question about it.
And then, once you are in recovery, you have some amazing resources. The Recovery Connection, our partner on this radio station. And you mentioned, it's interesting, you mentioned the class that you did, Jay, in the jail for fathers. We had the person that was on the show that actually, came and said, I want to put something together, how to be a father. And that, I assume, was a catalyst for getting that started. And so that's the type of thing that we found that is kind of a success story, is providing those connections and making sure that there are people to be there to help, because where it falls apart and you do end up with relapses when they don't have those connections. So for any of those who are listening out there, just keep that in mind. The Sheriff's Department has that information, and by all means, if you know of a recovery center, get in if you need help. Switching topics a bit, but before we do that, I just want to make sure that there isn't anything else, any new programs that you would like to cover.
No, one of the things that Jay failed to forget it, but he failed to mention, is one that he started a couple years ago. I call it the God Pod, but it's very effective in our jail. We have a waiting list to get in it. They read the Bible 4 or 5 hours a day, but they also cover a lot. Well, you could talk more about it than I can, but every time I go in there, it's really remarkable what that group has done over the years, and we know what the answer is a lot of times. If you're a nonviolent offender and you really want to change, we know it's what you've been talking about. It's the treatment afterwards when they get out, and they've created a halfway house funded by local churches, non-denominational, have put this together. And when they get out of this program, a very structured program in a jail, they go live at this halfway house, and the numbers, recidivism numbers, are reflecting it, that it's working. It's really low. So these guys are not coming back, and they are becoming productive members of our society and not doing whatever they did to get in there. So it's something that's my hat's off to Jay. And Jay, without Jay, he's done just a tremendous job in our jail, overseeing all our programs. And if we didn't have that, and I was trying to, not coerce, but I was trying to get Rachel, who's our program director,
Case manager,
and
yeah.
what she does, she interviews everybody, and she makes sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing in the jail. So it takes, again, you have these programs, and there's a lot of people on the back side that they don't get the credit, but they're working on it every day. And I thought if she came here today, she would be, she's a lot prettier than we are, and but this is a radio station, so you won't see it.
Of course, now that I've done away with the beard.
But she does do a tremendous job.
I think one of the other programs is kind of stay tuned. We are looking at the possibility of an art recovery program.
Oh, wonderful.
And that is something that a lot of people think it's just arts and crafts, but it's not that at all. It's actually teaching these individuals how to express themselves through art or music or whatever it might be. So we're working on that right now.
And I know Frontline has shown a lot of success with their art program.
Right.
And they have a neat festival that they put down on Cheston where they have sidewalk art, and make T-shirts, everything. It's just amazing, and it's amazing to see how engaged they keep folks with that.
Well, Bill, one of the questions you had was how do you determine what you do with a particular defendant? One of the things that I see will be graduation certificates from a program called CDA, or you don't really graduate from the God Pod, but within the jail, inmates receive certain certificates and certain documents then that are signed by persons within the jail that are then part of their file. So it's almost like a mini report card. Obviously, most of them have perfect attendance, but but I'm still allowed to see their conduct in the jail and the programs that they graduate from. And I think it creates hope for some of the inmates that if they do these programs, that the judges will look kindly upon that when we're sentencing them. So that information that we get in collaboration with the jail, which they do entirely on their own, but it's evidence that's presented to the judges that we consider.
Well, what it sounds like, and when you look in the medical world, is case management, where you have various different parties in a hospital getting together to look at a cancer patient, and someone analyzing his diet, someone analyzing his blood work, someone, but that's what it sounds like to me, that, we're all sitting down at the table to make sure that we do what's best for the patient in this case. So, boy, hats off to all of you that are working on this problem. It's just been, people should be reassured that we do have a problem, but boy, we are attacking it the best way we can and the most logical way that we can. And so with that, I am going to move on to another topic that the sheriff has been working diligently on, and that's school safety. Something that's been in everyone's minds lately, and
Especially
so
now with school starting up again.
yeah, school's starting up, and you've got some kids, we're kind of anxious. Not only that, for gosh, here I got to do homework again. Yeah, that bring back memories. So, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Sheriff, there's been a move in the state to provide metal detectors, and I wanted to get your opinion about that and what you feel the impact will have.
Well, I have an opinion, but we have 7 school districts, public school systems in Porter County, and plus the private schools. And some of the feedback I'm hearing from the superintendents is that they're concerned about that. I mean, the state just funded $500,000 in their metal detectors, but what they are is wands. We're not real sure how they're going to use those wands, and if they did find a gun, if a teacher used a wand or an administrator uses a wand and finds a gun, what are they going to do? Of course, we have SROs, but we don't have SROs, school resource officers, in almost all the middle schools now will have them in the fall. And that's the other thing from a school safety perspective. The Sheriff's Department has taken over East Porter schools in August. So we'll have a police officer in Washington Township. We'll have one in Morgan, and in January we'll have one in Couts. And we're increasing our school resource officers in Boone. So that's the high school and middle school. And we have one in, we're increasing it at Union too, which is Wheeler. But they've got 2 great schools, a middle school and a high school. And we'll have 3 full-time there. And we're also partnering with Portage in the Portage school system. And that's going on now. So, I mean, ideally, in my opinion, and none of the schools agree with this. So obviously, I'm the charge of the Porter County Safe School Commission, and our next meeting's August 14th. I think if we had actually metal detectors like you do in a court, like you go in a courthouse or into an airport, we can prevent any guns from coming into the school. The problem with that is you'd have one entrance and one exit, and there's a big concern, and I understand that. The wands, you're going to have to ask me in about a month because we're working that out right now. There's a lot of questions to be answered. We think they should have, in my opinion, they should have spent that $500,000 towards an alert system like we have School Guard. We believe that School Guard is very important. And let me just give you I've got our next safe school meeting. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think I'll have the police chief of Noblesville coming here at our safe school meeting to talk about the shooting that happened a couple months ago. And we're also trying to get the teacher that was shot 4 times. We had the superintendent a couple months back here, and we want to cover all that. He's a strong believer in School Guard, and they're working on an alert system because he knows what happened there was kind of an anomaly in how it all happened. But so there's a lot of things going on with school safety.
Right, and just to give some people information, one of the things I've got a question is, okay, you have the wand detector. What if they find a gun? You know, who's going to disarm that person? If they are purposely causing damage, who's going to disarm them? So, you've got to think about that. One thing is if you can, just briefly, because we are going to have to wrap up the show here, is explain people about the alert system that we use here in Porter County.
Well, we have School Guard. It's a free app for every teacher. Every school, all 7 school districts have it. All the public schools have, the private schools have it. Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, some of your daycare centers. I just found out that the libraries in Porter County have it. Some medical professions are actually going to it, and the counterpart of that is the partner part of it is called Hero 911. That's the app that the law enforcement has, which is free for the police. So if there was a shooting in a school, the teacher would just push the red button, and it will go directly to 911. But it would also here's the caveat. It would notify all on-duty and off-duty local, state, federal police, and county police in a 20-mile radius immediately. So you're really eliminating a lot of the problems of being alerted. And obviously we're a firm believer of this. It's $1,000 a school. Mayor Costas and myself actually funded all of the schools in Porter County, the YMCA's and the Boys and Girls Club. We came up with $1,000 to cover the initial costs, and each school pays $100 a month. And so if you're a Manuel Lutheran, St. Paul's, St. Pat's up in Chesterton, no one really has a Victory Christian. No one has a problem with that $100 a month. It was that initial $1,000 that was kind of a stumbling block. And that's what we're trying to get the state to kind of think about.
Right, and the whole idea there is to alert professionals that day in and day out, they're trained to deal with someone with a gun.
On duty and off duty.
Exactly. So that's the thing is, again, you could find a gun, but what do? Is there going to be a trained professional that can overtake that person and where the alert system alerts someone who that's their job? And
Right.
So, again, we're going to have to wrap up the show because we have to do some technical things to get ready for our next guest. But I want to appreciate you coming on the air and giving your perspective on each individual. And that's the thing. It's a team effort here in Porter County, and that's what everyone has to realize. Judge Clymer, thank you for coming.
Thanks,
and Dave Reynolds,
Thank you.
thank you for what you do for the county, and as well as you, Judge. And Jay, same to you. Thank you for everything that you do to keep us safe and help provide help to those people who really need it and the guidance. So with that, we're going to wrap up this part of the show. And, there's my next guest. So we will be with you in just a minute. We will say goodbye to our guest and wish you all are going to tune out a safe, enjoyable rest of the week. And thanks again for coming on our show, and have a great week.
Thank you. See you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Bye. 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. Broadcast live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosala. This show will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 6 p.m. on WVLP. The Bill and Callie Show podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.
seed was ever made was probably forged in hell. My father was a good man. He was a lawyer by his trade. Only once did I ever see him misuse the blade. Well, it almost cut his thumb off when he took it for a tool. The knife was made for darker things. You could not bend the rules. Well, he let me take it camping once on a Boy Scout jamboree. I broke a half an inch off trying to stick it in a tree. Well, I hid it from him for a while, but the knife and he were one.
Welcome to the Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosella. Now, here are Bill and Callie.
Welcome back to the Bill and Kelly Show. And this second hour of the Bill and Kelly Show, we have a special guest with us. It's Andrea Backman, who is the CEO of the Les Turner ALS Foundation. So, Andrea, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Bill and Kelly. I'm happy to be here.
And I think we've talked off the show about we do have a common thing between both of us that we both lost a family member to ALS, and and that's one of my reasons I've been active in the Les Turner Walk for Life and so on. So what I thought I'd do is, first of all, we always like to ask our guests, especially if our listeners are not familiar with what the topic we're talking about, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, and then when you started at the ALS Foundation, and how long you've been there, and then let's talk about the foundation itself.
I'd be happy to. So as you mentioned, we do have a connection. Bill, you lost a family member to ALS, and a little over 10 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with ALS. And if you had asked me 10 years ago what I knew about ALS, I would have to admit I knew very, very little. I had a career. I was working doing private equity and investment management, traveling around the country, raising my family, and my mother came down with this strange disease. So I have to say it changed the course not only of my professional life, but obviously of my life. It was a very profound moment in our family. I became very involved. I went to every one of her appointments at the Lois and Solia ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine. I helped with caregivers. I helped with caregiving. I helped with the medicines. I helped my father deal with her illness. And about 3 years after she diagnosed, she died. And I went on with my career. It was obviously a sad time, but I went on doing what I was doing. And I began to be curious about the ALS community. And a colleague of mine got me involved with the ALS community. I began to do volunteer work as a trustee so that I could lend my expertise to what I saw was a devastating disease. And about 4 or so years ago, I took a sabbatical from my career, wondering what to do with my next chapter. And the position to lead the Les Turner ALS Foundation became available. Given my background in ALS, I decided to apply, and I'm thrilled and honored to be the CEO of the Les Turner ALS Foundation, which was the group that had helped my mother and our family during the course of her illness. So that's a long way of saying how I came to lead the foundation.
Right, and we discussed that you came on right after the Ice Bucket Challenge, so I mean that is something phenomenal. Exposure to ALS, and let's talk more about ALS, what it is, and what it's more commonly referred to as today.
Well, ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a mouthful. And I would say prior to the Ice Bucket Challenge, most people didn't know much about it. The Ice Bucket Challenge, to refresh all of your listeners, happened in August of 2014. In fact, we're just about coming up on the 4-year anniversary of that event. And it was also known prior to that time as Lou Gehrig's disease, in memory of the famous ball player who died of ALS. Now, unless you're a baseball aficionado, very few people today, frankly, know about Lou Gehrig. And the Ice Bucket Challenge did, even though it raised millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, the Ice Bucket Challenge, what its true benefit to this disease was the increased awareness of what ALS is. So that being said, if you give me a minute, I can tell you a little bit about the disease.
Yes, definitely.
ALS is a fatal neuromuscular and neurodegenerative disease, which means that over time the muscles in the body begin to fail because the motor neurons that tell the muscles how to work die off. This can happen with someone's speech, with their swallowing. It can happen in a limb, a leg, or an arm, or a finger. And regardless of where it starts, the progression of the disease is generally about the same, meaning that about half the people who get ALS die within 3 to 5 years of diagnosis. There are certainly outliers. We all have heard of Stephen Hawking, who lived with it for more than 50 years. And in fact, we deal with people with ALS in our foundation who've lived with it for decades. So that we do have that situation, but most commonly, people live with the disease about 3 to 5 years.
And those who've had extended life, is there such a thing as remission with ALS?
I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but based on what I've read, there could be misdiagnosis of ALS. We've yet to see a reversal of disease, a really documented reversal of disease. And we are hoping that in the future, with some of the drugs and therapies that are being tested, that we will begin to see remissions in ALS. And I can talk about that a little bit later as we talk about what's out there.
Right. And talking about that, so the Les Turner Foundation was started, and the history of that is kind of interesting. Les Turner himself was a person who had came down with ALS, and so his family, and I think there was one person who was really spearheading that whole process. Very instrumental. And do you want to tell us a bit about that, how the Les Turner came to be?
Absolutely, because really it is a great story. Les Turner was a businessman, married with 3 young sons, and he lived in the Chicago suburbs. And when he came down with ALS in 1976, his friends and family really didn't know what to do, or they didn't know where to turn. His doctor essentially said, "There's nothing we can do," and sent him home. At that time, understand, there were no clinics solely devoted to ALS. There were no research laboratories devoted to ALS. And people knew very little about the disease except that it was terminal. What Les's friends and family did, especially Harvey and Bonnie Gaffin, who were his brother-in-law and sister-in-law and are the founders of our foundation, they began to get their friends together and family and said, we need to do something. And so in 1977, they started the Les Turner ALS Foundation. We are the oldest independent ALS organization in the country and probably in the world. And with that small group of people, I have to say we have raised since that time nearly $70 million to fight ALS. We have established one of the first ALS research laboratories, one of the first ALS multidisciplinary clinics, and a very large team of support services, coordinators, and programs to help people with ALS. And in fact, the Les Turner ALS Foundation truly is the leader in comprehensive ALS care in Chicagoland, all because of Les's friends and family.
Right, and some of those beneficiaries, one thing that you do, the ALS Foundation has a close tie with Northwestern University, which I'm told houses a lot of the research for ALS. Can you talk to us a bit about that and maybe spend time? Several years ago when I was at the Walk for Life at Soldiers Field, I actually had the benefit of meeting the dream team, the research team for ALS, and that was a kind of I would say, a highlight in my life, meeting all these folks that are actually being funded by the ALS Foundation. So can you talk to us a bit about that and some of the research that they do?
Certainly. And in fact, Bill, since you met the dream team at the walk several years ago, the members of the number of people who are doing ALS research at the Les Turner ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine has continued to grow. It's really remarkable. So going back to the history, the Les Turner ALS Foundation began a partnership with Northwestern Medicine by funding ALS research going back to about 1979. And that partnership has continued for all these decades. And in fact, we formalized the partnership in 2014 when we formed a named ALS center within the Department of Neurology at Northwestern Medicine. And it's named the Les Turner ALS Center. Within that center houses 4 research laboratories, and the center is led by Dr. Robert Kalb, who is a physician and scientist. He came over from the University of Pennsylvania late last year, and he's the director, the first permanent director of the center, and we're delighted. So not only does Dr. Kalb run his own research laboratory, we have 3 other very renowned ALS researchers who each run their own laboratories and have staff as well. That includes Dr. Tipu Siddiq, who is a very well-known ALS researcher, and in fact the co-discoverer of the first gene related to ALS back in 1993, and many other discoveries thereafter. He is also a physician at our clinic. Dr. Hande Oslinger, whose research involves upper motor neurons and runs her own laboratory as well, and currently working on very interesting drug development work. And Dr. Evangelos Kiskinis, who came over several years ago from Harvard, and his laboratory focuses on what's called induced pluripotent stem cells. And these are essentially stem cells that are created in the laboratory, stem lines that can be used to test certain therapies and drugs with respect to ALS. So we've got lots of fascinating research going on by very renowned scientists.
Amazing. And so, I mean, at one of the leading centers in the United States, if not the world, neurological centers, Northwestern University. So there's a lot of great brain trust there. Let's step back a second, because there is another key factor here that the Les Turner Foundation also helps with, and that is providing services to the people who have been diagnosed with ALS. I know there's some clinicians in Northwest Indiana that help go out, and they act as kind of like social workers, if you will, and provide, to hook up services for these people who have been diagnosed. Can you spend some time about that? Maybe tell us a bit about if someone's out there and maybe they have a family member that's just been diagnosed, how they can get additional resources to help them out.
Absolutely. And I'm going to preface what I'm going to describe by saying that our support services team, and we'll talk about the depth of our team, but that group of registered nurses and social workers works very, very closely with the clinicians at the Lois and Celia ALS Center at Northwestern. So that is the ALS clinic that frankly the foundation helps to fund and helped to found back in the mid-'80s. Our team here is led by a director of support services and education, and she has a team of 8, as I mentioned, nurses and social workers who work with people diagnosed with ALS. They'll do home visits, they'll do phone visits. We will lend equipment. We will discuss insurance issues. We'll help with grants if grants are needed, say for certain home modifications or respite caregiving or transportation. This is an amazing team that is very, very experienced in the world of ALS. Some of them have over 30 years experience working with ALS. So it is a very compassionate, very experienced team who then can help someone diagnosed or newly diagnosed or living with the disease for a while, but can help them work directly with the clinic and help them and their families in the home. There's really nothing else like it for ALS, and I'm not sure there's much out there like this for any other disease, frankly.
And that's one of the things that I always tell people. You know, I always grieve for and really have a place in my heart for anyone who's suffering a long-term illness, whether it be terminal cancer. But, you know, one of the things is with ALS that I learned with my father is one of the differences is their mental faculties are one of the things that do not deteriorate. So it's extremely difficult to see these people go through what they do, and their blood chemistry really doesn't change unless they're being administered for some other disease. So really what our doctor kept on, my father's doctor kept on alerting us the fact is that, you know, please keep communicating. He knows he just can't communicate with you, which was a tough time. So talking about some of some of those support services. So say if someone here in Northwest Indiana, per se, is just been diagnosed, and I would like to get back to the diagnosis because that in itself is kind of tricky. Once they've been diagnosed, whether it be at a facility, a neurologist, typically who does the diagnosis, where can they contact the Les Turner Foundation to get help, to get some of these resources?
Well, I'm going to give you both our phone number and our website, so there's no problem in anybody reaching us. We can be reached directly at 847-679-3311, or you can go online to lesturnerals.org. Now, anyone who is diagnosed can speak with our Director of Support Services, who will make sure that that person can get an appointment at the clinic, can get to the clinic if they need assistance, and they qualify for assistance, obviously, because the assistance is financially based, obviously. But we can help in so many ways. A visit can be made to the home. We can do visits over the phone if somebody lives too far away. We can work with family members. We invite people to support groups. We've got 4 of them all around the Chicagoland area. And I should mention, all of our services are free. We don't charge for anything. That is what we do. And we do rely on private philanthropy to make that happen.
That's wonderful.
And as well as what we're about to bring up here is a series of charity events that there's a number of them throughout the year. And
there are.
Definitely. And I do have some pictures that was sent ahead. And I'm going to kind of, and as our listeners know, kind of bumble through this. And let me see here. Yes, here we go. Let me make sure we're at a good starting point. And all right, we're going to start off with, of course, the Les Turner ALS logo that's up right now, which has changed since I've been associated with it. They used to have a different looking logo, but with that, we're going to move on to the first picture. Now, this one really touches my heart a bit because it's an event that I've been involved with, and I'm hoping to get involved with again, about Les Spirit Lester's Legacy. And this is a group, I assume, that was at the Walk for Life. Do you want to talk about a little bit about the Walk for Life, when it happens, and who participates?
Oh, I'd be happy to. So the ALS Walk for Life is we think the largest ALS gathering anywhere in the country at this point. We get anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 people. We hold it every September, and this year it will be on Saturday, September 29th. It's held right outside Soldier Field. And there's so many things that make this event, to me, so unique and so inspiring. It is a gathering of families, people with their loved ones, people who are living with ALS currently, families and friends who may have lost someone to ALS, but they still want to be part of the community because no one understands another family dealing with ALS than someone who's just like them. We bring people in from all over the 6-county Chicago area and beyond, and they're there to celebrate being together, they're celebrating life, and they're raising money and raising hope for the future. The walk itself is a 2-mile walk along the beautiful Chicago Museum campus, and we end up back at the Stadium Green outside of Soldier Field. We always get some nice coverage of the event. There's food, there's activities for the kids, there are vendors that are there, and I have to tell you, I've never seen so many smiles in one place as I do at the walk.
And that's interesting. I'll just add a little bit to that. So each family of someone who's come down with ALS, and they may be living or they may have passed, but they form these teams, usually named after the individual, so they all set up in their own respective areas in the green area, just right outside beautiful Soldiers Field. So all this is going on in that green area. And if the family members are still alive, by golly, they're there, and they participate in a walk with the help of their family and support friends who happen to be there. And I would share this with you. It's absolutely amazing. Each family usually brings a plethora of food. I've never seen anything like it. It's a wide variety of food as well. So it's not only for themselves, but for the other families who happen to be there. So it is kind of a neat event. Everything that is wrapped around that event, and it was touching to me to participate in a number of years that I have. So you also have some people that MC the events that actually have been touched by ALS. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So one of our hosts is Phil Schwartz, who is the meteorologist for ABC 7 Chicago. And Phil lost 2 family members to ALS. He's recently joined our board as well. We also have Melissa McGurran from the Mix, who will be another co-host. We'll have Tracy Butler from ABC 7, another meteorologist there, who is going to conduct some interviews that will be shown on the Jumbotron. So we always have celebrities who show up and people who really believe in the cause.
Yeah, and they do a great job ushering everyone through because their hearts have been touched by ALS, and so.
You talk about people who have been touched by ALS and this gentleman who has 2 family members who have passed from. Can you let our listeners know, is ALS something that is genetic that may run in families? Is it something that people should look into if they know someone in their family has been touched by this?
Callie, that's a really good question. So about 5 to 10% of cases, as far as we know, are hereditary.
Okay.
So we know that there are certain genes that run in families. We've got families we're working with who've had multiple members diagnosed with ALS.
Are there tests that can be done to tell you if you are genetically predisposed to something like this?
There are. But I guess I would say the best thing to do would be, if there is a history of ALS in your family, would be to contact the Lois and Solia ALS Clinic. We have a genetic counselor on staff who can help go through your family genetics and take a look at that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, and one of the nurses, nurse practitioners, I should say, let me know about that, the last Walk for Life that I was at. So it's something I never knew about. And so it does weigh heavily sometimes in my mind. Gosh, should I have it done or shouldn't I? And that's a difficult, very difficult decision. So with that, let's move on here. We'll now this is just, but I tell you, it's one of the events that I participate in an event, and it is a neat thing to talk to the family members and share your stories and with what's happened in your family and their family. And and they're very open about doing so. And so
Another quick question about the walk. If you're not capable or able to go to the walk to participate in person, is there a way to find out about people who have got teams together where you can donate towards that team?
Absolutely. You can donate toward a team, or you can donate just a general walk donation. It's very easy to do. The website is alswalkforlife.org. You can also find it very easily on our general website, which is lesturnerals.org. I will say this about the teams. We just launched today a challenge given by a generous donor. So we've got teams that are now competing to see who can bring in the most new members or raise a certain amount of money the quickest, because they will have those donations matched on a 3-to-1
wonderful.
basis.
That's great.
Yeah, that is.
So we're very excited about that. And teams do get a little competitive. We have over 200 teams that come to the walk every year. Some of these teams are over 100 people. I mean, some of these teams are very large. They've got matching T-shirts. They may have certain hats. They are just having fun being together. And Bill, you talked about the family aspect of the walk. It's very indicative of who we are. The Les Turner ALS Foundation really is a family, and we're a family that exists for anyone who's touched by ALS.
And that is so true. You know, one of the comical things that I ran into, I was there. So, people started taking selfies, and I thought, great, I'll just go ahead and get it. And those are on my Facebook page. People have seen them. I have like a yellow vest on with the Les Turner logo on it. Things get so competitive. There was this one family from Cicero that noticed that I was going around taking pictures, having pictures myself taken with the teams. And all of a sudden I got drug over and say, listen, pal, you're going to take a picture with us, okay? And so I ended up taking a picture with them. Yeah, I felt slightly threatened by that, but if I said no, but it's actually an inspiring event to see these people's spirit blossom through what they've gone through and their family members.
Because even though they're individual families, when they're there, they're one big family.
They are. And, even the people that have lost someone, and like Les, they have his picture, you'll find that all throughout. If the person isn't there, you'll see them in a wheelchair if they are, but if they passed on, they always memorialize them in a picture. They have a T-shirt with their picture or name on. So it is kind of in a way, somewhat touching event for people who have attended for the first time, and there's entertainment. There's music, entertainment, and food. Oh my gosh! One of the ideas I came to one of the event coordinators said, I think we ought to sell food tickets for it so they could go around and have a taste of Walk for Life, because the variety of food was just fascinating. So that is Walk for Life. Why don't we move on to one of the next events, because there's quite a few of them. And this is the picture of some folks standing outside the Barrington train station. So if you kind of fill us in, Andrea, what they're doing there.
I cannot. Oh, there we go. I can see it on my screen. This is a wonderful event that we do every year, and it's called Tag Days. So your listeners may not know that May is ALS Awareness Month. And so during the month of May, we have many, many communities around the Chicagoland area and Northwest Indiana which can organize tag days in their community. It's very simple. You get a group of volunteers together. We provide the white plastic cans. We provide the aprons. And sometimes people go in front of, say, a grocery store or a shopping center. Other times people are at the stoplights. And they're collecting, it's amazing how many quarters and dimes and dollars, and if we're lucky, a few 20s in there, will go a very long way to helping the ALS research that we fund and our programs.
Yeah. So again, every bit and piece helps. So and that's something nice about all the benefit programs and charity events that they have, and we still have some to stop off at. So let's go on to the next one. This one is Strikeout Start. It looks like there's a run, so it's hard to tell where it's at, but it's definitely a run going on. And
I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, it just popped up.
Okay.
These runners are from our Strikeout ALS 5K, and a couple of years ago, we realized people wanted to do more than just run, and so we added a component. We added a 1 mile run, walk, and roll. And the roll is because we've got lots of people with ALS who want to do the course.
Right.
Or kids in strollers. I mean, however you want to roll is fine with us. This is a wonderful event. It's held at Guaranteed Rate Field, and those of us long-term Chicagoans still know that as White Sox Park. But the course is run throughout the neighborhood. You finish the run or the walk in the warning track inside the field, and then there's an after party to watch the All-Star game at the Chi Sox Bar and Grill right across the street. It's a great event. We had over 700 runners a couple of weeks ago on a beautiful night in Chicago, and a lot of people, a lot of families came to this. It was really a fun event.
So this takes place in July usually?
Yes, it takes place during the All-Star game.
During the All-Star game.
Awesome.
Right.
With that,
So
we're going to have.
once the All-Star game is held there, we're pretty good.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to have to take a little station break here just for a minute, and we'll be back in just a minute.
You are listening to the Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosala. Now, here are your hosts, Bill and Callie. We're going to get right back.
And here we are.
All right. Yes,
Welcome
we'd
back.
love to hear about the education in the community.
Go right ahead, Andrea. So you wanted to bring up some of the educational programs.
Yes. Part of our mission is to educate not only the public about ALS and increase awareness of the disease, but we also educate professionals. So we do what's called in-service presentations, and these are done for medical professionals. We may do this at hospice locations, people who work with people with ALS. We may do it with home health care organizations so that their workers are adequately trained to work with people with ALS. We've done in-service presentations with ambulance companies, with medical school students. So it's part of our outreach because ALS is a rare disease. It's classified that way as a rare disease. There are many doctors, nurses, who and other caregivers who may never see a case of ALS in their practice. So we're out there to help them understand more about the disease and make sure that people living with ALS can get better care.
That's great.
Right, and I think we have a slide that speaks to that, but the next slide up that we have, you probably could speak about this, it is another charity event, kind of a white tie.
Looks like the gala.
Yeah, the gala. So
that is the gala, yes. I am standing there next to one of our honorees at the gala,
With a
young man
gorgeous
there in the
dress and some
wheelchair.
earrings
Sorry?
there, too. I said you look gorgeous there with that dress and those earrings.
Oh, well,
and
thank you.
everything.
Young man named Daryl, and he is standing there with one of the doctors from our clinic, Dr. Sunda Ajur-Driss, who is the head of the Lois and Celia ALS Clinic at Northwestern. And this is a black tie event. We get about 500 people to this event every year, and probably get another 15 to 20 people with ALS who come. They are so excited to be there, because something about living with a disease like ALS is that it's very hard to forget that you have a disease like this, because it so encompasses every aspect of what you do. Your ability to move, your ability to breathe, your ability to speak, your ability to eat. It affects every aspect of your life. And to have a night out like this, and of course, this is, of course, comped for anybody with ALS and a caregiver, but to have a night out like this for them is just such an evening to remember, and it is for us as well. because they're part of our family.
Absolutely.
It's a lovely event. It will be held next year on March 9th at Rockwell on the River, and we're looking for another beautiful evening.
And Kelly's writing this all down in her calendar, so I think you will see us there. Yeah, it is a nice event, and the fact that the people are there that are affected by ALS, that it brings more meaning to the event. So that's a nice thing. So we're moving on, and now
Can I add one more thing about the gala?
sure.
Go
We'd
right
love
ahead,
to.
please.
So the fact that we're seeing, a young man here with ALS, here with the head of our clinic, and our researchers are there, I would say it's very rare that people get to see each other just as people, right? When you go to the doctor's office, the doctor is there, you're the patient.
That's right. There's no lab
when you work
coats
with a nurse,
on.
you feel the same way. There are no barriers at this event. This is, everyone's here for the same reason. We all want to have the same shared vision, which is a world free of ALS. And so we're all there for the same purpose.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I can't say we're kind of looking forward to that.
Yes.
And I think you will see us there. So
Wonderful.
With that, we're moving on to the next slide. This slide is of the clinic, the Les Turner Clinic.
Yes, this is the, so just to work on the names a little bit, it's a little confusing. The center, the ALS Center, is called the Les Turner ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine. And the clinic itself is named for Lois and Solia. It is the Lois and Solia ALS Clinic. Her family has supported the clinic since 1986. So we're very thankful for their support. And we've got a picture here of a lovely young woman here, and I know who she is, but I won't reveal her name, here with one of our nurses. And the beautiful thing about a clinic visit is because we have a multidisciplinary clinic, meaning you come every 3 months and you get to see all of your doctors and clinicians at the same time. So the neurologist comes in, the pulmonologist comes in, because ALS affects respiratory function very significantly. The medical assistant comes in, the respiratory therapist, the nurse, the dietitian, the occupational therapist, the speech pathologist. So all of the disciplines come in to see you as opposed to you having to make 6 appointments.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And then we move on to, I think what we're getting into here is the research end of it. So this is a picture of someone in a lab coat pouring a liquid of some type. So I assume that's the lab. If you're
yes, it is.
Yeah,
that is, sorry, it just popped up. Yes, so as I mentioned, we have 4 laboratories at Northwestern that are dedicated to ALS research. Now, they're all approaching this from a different perspective. So Dr. Sadiq's laboratory focuses on the genetic background within ALS. Dr. Oslinger's lab, as I mentioned, focuses on upper motor neurons, which are the ones in the brain, which really before her, no one was focusing on those in the world of ALS. So she's truly a pioneer, as are all of these lead researchers. Dr. Kiskinis, as I mentioned, is focusing on induced pluripotent stem cells. And Dr. Kalb's laboratory, which is the newest of our laboratories, really focuses on basic mechanisms underlying ALS. It's a basic science research laboratory. And there's nothing basic about it. That is what it's called. But in fact, he is there uncovering the building blocks that relate to ALS.
Now, are there clinical trials that go on as well that patients can, through their doctors, be recommended for?
Yes, in fact, I'm really glad you asked that, Callie. We have 2 studies going on currently. We have a phase 3 clinical drug trial that's happening at the clinic. It is a drug from a Finnish company called Orion. And a phase 3 means that it's reached the highest level of testing under the FDA guidelines, just so that people understand what that means. This drug is supposed to, or is suggested to have an improvement in muscle activation. So we're excited to launch that. We also have we're part of a very large research study happening at the clinic called Answer ALS. Answer ALS is the largest study ever in the history of ALS ever to be conducted. We've been working on this now for several months. We are partners with 7 other leading neurology academic institutions across the country. And we're working with IBM and Microsoft, among other corporate partners, who are pulling together all of this data, which then will be freely available to any ALS researcher around the world. This goes a long way to making sure that ALS research can be freely shared and not duplicated, because resources are so tight.
No, I think that's genius, because you don't want 50 people all working on the exact same thing when you can have 50 people all working on all different various types of things that are important in this.
Absolutely.
And so as you've been talking, I've been going through the slides that are evidently of the labs. And so just to give you an idea of the variety of work that's going on. So it is really a sad disease that it attacks. And for those of us who have family members that it has taken hold of, it's very difficult to see that. And someone that was vibrant in their life and just go through this where they lose slowly their mechanical abilities, ability to talk, and so on. And so there are resources and a research going on to help out with that.
That's right.
So, so
the Les Turner Foundation is that bright spot in all of that, because they're there to help you through that whole process. And I'm assuming that there's classes and programs also for the families and the caregivers of these people as well, of learning how to deal with it and how they personally can make things better, not only for themselves but for the patient.
Kelly, you're right. And in fact, there are 2 ways that we're able to really help family members deal with ALS. One is through our support groups. And as I mentioned, we offer 4 monthly support groups around the Chicagoland area. We're offering one now, a virtual support group that is for young adults who may have ages 18 to 30, who may have a parent or family member with ALS. And that can be done virtually. The others are in person. And we can help with any issue that may be going on. The other area that we assist is with our home visit program, and that's where you've got a nurse or a social worker come to your home for 2 or 3 hours and walk through all of your specific concerns and needs.
That's great.
Yeah, as we are getting closer to the end of the show, I just wanted to reach out to you and see if there's something, any new, maybe charity events that are coming up. I know, well, suppose someone wants to have a charity event, say in Northwest Indiana. Is there someone that they can contact within Les Turner to find out what resources they can get for, like banners and the use of the logo? How would someone do that?
Absolutely. We have a lot of individuals who want to host their own events to benefit the Les Turner ALS Foundation. They can, again, go on to the website, and the program is called Fundraise Your Way, so that's easy to find on our website. Or you can call the office. Again, the number is 847-679-3311, and one of our event associates will be happy to pull all that information together and walk you through the best way to run an event.
Right, and I'll share a story with you. One of the things that kind of comical. Yeah, I was trying to organize a concert here in Northwest Indiana, and had everything arranged, and this is back in right around the Ice Bucket Challenge time, and that just went viral. And we could, and for those of you who remember, literally everyone was posting on Facebook, any social media, and challenging people. And I challenged Ed Curran of Channel 2, and he gave a nice donation in my father's name. Thank you, Ed. I don't know if he's listening or not, but yeah, that was just a marvelous time. But I sat there, and that was just being eclipsed. This whole idea of having a concert. I said, you know what, I guess, and then
compete against
then
that.
I came to Walk for Life and found out how many dollars were benefited out of that challenge. And do you have that figure that you can share with us? How much was raised out of the Ice Bucket Challenge?
Well, I will say nationwide, the Ice Bucket Challenge raised somewhere in the neighborhood of about $125 million.
Wow.
Across the country, and the bulk of that went to the national organization. We here at the Les Turner ALS Foundation saw a lift of about $1 million, which was certainly very, we were very grateful for it, and certainly very helpful. And from that, we were able to hire more staff to be out in the field to work with families with ALS. We were able to open up another ALS research laboratory. We were able to increase our grant program. So we definitely put that money to work right away.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't remember what that was all about, and I find that hard to believe because it was on the news, it was on social media.
There's some millennials who probably don't know.
That's true. That's true. So what it was is basically people were challenging. First of all, they started out by having a bucket of ice water
and pouring it on their
heads. And then after they did so, they challenged their friends. I want Joe Smith. I challenge you, and so on. And right. People then that was kind of like a pyramid thing, and that they went out and did their own ice bucket challenges. And oh my word, that just blew up.
It was everywhere.
And
yes.
and it raised exposure for ALS, as you said before, and brought in really sorely needed dollars. And if I remember correctly, when I was at the Walk for Life, that was right after that Ice Bucket Challenge, someone told me that some of the members of the Dream Team were actually benefited from those dollars in their research. So that was good to know.
Absolutely. We were able to put the money, as I said, able to put the money to work right away for research, for clinical care, and for support services. So we were thrilled. And if I can mention one closing thought, we operate here at the Les Turner ALS Foundation with a tremendous sense of urgency because someone is diagnosed in this country every 90 minutes with ALS. Geez. And someone in this country dies from ALS every 90 minutes. So we don't have time to waste, and we don't. We are 100% committed to the fight against ALS, and there's a lot of exciting new work happening in the ALS field, whether it's drug development work, whether it's stem cell work, whether it's gene editing. It's probably the most hopeful time. You can talk to people who've worked with ALS for decades and decades. This is the most hopeful time for ALS research, and we're excited to be a part of it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and to talk about key into numbers, one of the things at Walk for Life, and I assume probably at some of the other events that they had, is this shoot with really like a sign showing every person's picture and name who had passed from ALS. And just to sit back and see that was, it's sad, but realize that, there's help. There's help now for some of those people, and you get to see some of those people that are being helped there because they're in there with their family members. So I just can't wait to finally get back in the fold and be at this year's Walk for Life. It's a meaningful event for anyone who has witnessed a family member just go through some horrible times. And
well, thank you, Bill. We'd be delighted to see you at the ALS Walk for Life, which again, I'm going to make a little plug, is September 29th, Saturday at Soldier Field. And you can find out more at alswalkforlife.org.
Wonderful. We'll definitely be there.
Great. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and close out the show. And Andrea, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you making the time to talk with us today and share some information about the very good work that the Les Turner Foundation has done in both charity events, funding research, funding resources for patients out
And
there,
their families,
and
yes.
families. And please, and especially in Northwest Indiana, if you know of someone that is going through that diagnosis, please call the Les Turner Foundation, and they will be able to direct you in the right path to getting help, whether it be financial, equipment, education, emotional help, all around. So they're great people. And if you can make it to the walk, oh, by golly, they would love to have you part of the team, or maybe if you want to sponsor a team, that would be great as well. So with that, Andrea, is there anything else you want to share with us in parting?
No, not necessarily, but we're excited for September. We're excited for the walk. We're excited to welcome thousands of people, and we're excited to hopefully put an end to ALS in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for the honor.
Thank you, Andrea. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, we do. We
Take care.
definitely do. And hope maybe sometime, maybe when we get closer to the walk, we can have you back on again. Just maybe maybe not a whole show, but maybe just an update. So
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
and with
you.
that, hope to see you there, and I'll find you somehow. It's a big crowd, but we'll find you somehow and hook up at the event. So with that, we would like to wish everyone a very safe and enjoyable rest of the week, and a very safe and enjoyable weekend. And again, Andrea, we appreciate you being on the show, and goodbye for now.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
You have been listening to The Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. Broadcast live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosella. This show will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 6 p.m. on WVLP. The Bill and Callie Show podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.